this past weekend. UFC 274 in front of 17,000 strong at the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona. The name on the marquee has got to be Charles "Du Bronx" Oliveira, who this past weekend submitted Justin Gaethje by rear naked choke. The official time coming at 3 minutes and 22 seconds of round number 1. In doing so, he did not defend his UFC lightweight title. That's right, because he was stripped, because he came in overweight by, I believe the official number was like a half pound or something like that. I imagine it might have been mere ounces. We can get into all that, but more or less, practically speaking, he defended the title, even though it is now vacant, and he is now officially, once again, the number 1 contender. Mark, let me throw it over to you. I've been speaking for too long. What was your assessment? Your love and your adoration for Charles "Du Bronx" has been well documented on this show. What was your assessment of his performance and your overall take?
My assessment is stop doubting my boy, Charles. Stop it. He is way too good, and you are all making yourselves look way too dumb. The guy gets more and more. I don't mean people picking against him. You're allowed to pick against him, but the people who, Gaethje's going to break him, he's going to walk through him. Shut up. The guy gets more and more impressive every single time we see him. He is one of the most dangerous fighters we've ever had the pleasure of watching, simply because there is nowhere that you're safe when you're dealing with him. He is a finisher of the highest order when he gets a hold of you. You could survive for a bit, as Justin did, but Charles is always one move ahead. He comes at you with a high variety of strikes on the feet, and they all have power now, which wasn't always the case. He walks you down even. And the thing that makes him most unique of all is that he has created a recovery time for himself that other fighters don't get to have. I had this thought in the Dustin fight, but I wasn't sure if I was right. And now after seeing it again here, I'm like, wow, this is really what's happening. What Charles Oliveira does now is that anytime he gets stung at all, even if he's fine, but realizes he's going to have like 2 seconds of feeling buzzed, he puts his ass on the mat. And none of these guys he's fighting are going to follow him there. So he has essentially created this time where anytime a solid punch lands, he gets to say, oh, all right, he got me. Let me sit for 5 seconds. All right, there we go. Shook that off. And now I pop up ready to fight. It's incredibly smart. It's incredibly unique. And it makes him incredibly hard to finish because, yes, Charles can be hit. We know that. But this strategy basically forces you to KO him standing or to drop him in a way that's so bad that he's not aware, because there's no hitting him with a string of things on the feet because he goes down on the initial buzz and he's recovering because you're not going to follow him. So he has become an unbelievably tough puzzle to solve right now. His mental game seems to be just as strong, if not stronger, than his fight game, especially seeing everything with the weight cut and getting stripped, and he did not care, stuck to business, came out, finished it within a round. Pure and simple, he is a frightening human being right now. And Justin, he went there. He did crack Charles, as we said he probably would. But like I said last week, people were going to be surprised by how often it was Charles cracking Justin in those exchanges. And they were. And I think Justin was as well. It was obvious very early that wasn't going quite how Justin expected it to go. You know, no one walks down Justin Gaethje. Chandler hung with him, but Gaethje was dictating it still. Oliveira walked at him, and Justin was so thrown off that he was legit just winging punches at certain points, which I imagine was not the game plan. But he made it exciting. He hung tough on the ground. He fought the hand at one time. But eventually he had a tap like the rest of them. And it remains to be seen if that was the last of Justin's title shots in the UFC. I'm sure being exciting as all hell will help him if he can put another streak together. But this one was about Charles, and as he said, the champion has a name, and his name is Charles Oliveira. Give my man his damn belt back.
Omar, bringing you in here, what was your reaction to Oliveira's performance as well as Gaethje's?
I mean, the fight was fantastic from beginning to end. I think the one thing that I noticed was a lot like the Khabib fight, where Gaethje was also kind of on his back foot, also worried about certain elements of that fight that might not go his way. And I think that's where Gaethje falters. When Gaethje when Gaethje knows he's just as good or better than somebody, there's a confidence that he fights with where he's able to go forward without worrying about what's going to happen because he can take care of it. With people like Khabib and people like Oliveira, who are essentially specialists in what they do on the ground. Gaethje, I think, in his mind, as much as he's trained, as much as he knows he can't hang down there with those two guys. And I think both of those fights, you can see very similar attitudes towards the fight once it got going, where Gaethje had a game plan. Gaethje knew what he needed to do on the feet. But the reality is the entire time he's trying to do what he needs to do on the feet, there's a part of him that is concerned always about either the takedown or the possibility of the fight going to the ground. On top of that, in this specific fight, you also have a guy in Oliveira who has improved his striking leaps and bounds from what it was years ago, who has been able to string together a style that works for him because, to Mark's point, no one's trying to get him to the ground. So he'll pressure you all day because what are you going to do? Take him down? Because that is the defense for somebody coming at you nonstop during an entire fight, is you change levels on one of their hooks or one of their whatever, and you take them down, or at least you try to force a takedown. Oliveira will walk you down and then pull guard on you because he can. Like, it's a completely different puzzle to solve, and Gaethje, I think, from jump was just not comfortable in there with what it actually felt like. You can game plan, you can do all these different things. Charles Oliveira is not a guy that you can properly prepare for because there aren't guys like Charles Oliveira out there. So it's one thing to train as much as you can. I mean, just as an example, and not to really get too far off track, but just look at like the Imanari rolls that like Kamaru Usman was throwing when he was training with Chandler to get prepared for Tony Ferguson. Just in that realm, you can't prepare for Tony Ferguson in that respect, right? Tony Ferguson is an enigma. He's a challenge. He's a one of a kind. And Oliveira has a lot of those same attributes when it comes to uniqueness because of the way he's been able to evolve his game over time. It was fantastic to see, and he really presents a real problem right now, the 155-pound division. And I know everybody's talking about getting another crack at him, this, that, the other. I just don't see what anybody else at this point presents that's going to be different than what we've already seen attempt to take away from Oliveira.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark, I so agree with you. This, like, since Saturday night, it has slowly dawned on me of what is actually going on in a Charles Oliveira fight. At my initial reaction, which I shared with you guys in our text, was like, I can't believe this guy. Every fight, these past few fights, he keeps getting dropped in the first round, and then he comes back. And I'm like, oh, I think this is like kind of his, like, either conscious or subconscious game plan, where once his bell gets rung, he lets himself kind of fall because he knows that he's going to recover because nobody's going to follow him. It's kind of fucking brilliant.
I think it's a very conscious choice. Chandler truly dropped him, and he survived and recovered. But Poirier and Gaethje, I thought it with the Poirier ones, and I was like, is that what's happening? And as soon as I saw the Gaethje ones, especially the one where Charles starts to throw a kick after he gets cracked, and then he's like, you know what, I'm just going to sit down. Like, the kick is halfway thrown. Like, you could tell that it is a conscious choice. Yeah. As soon as he feels that little bit of buzz, he's like, hang on, let me sit for a minute. No one's going to come near me while I'm sitting, and then I'll pop back up when I'm ready to go. And it's fucking brilliant, like you said.
Yeah,
and I think it's sad that people... I think it's sad that I've seen people on the interwebs complain that Charles fights like a bitch and that he doesn't stand and trade with people.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, then go down there then, if he's such a bitch.
I mean, the argument is just so... He knocked out Gaethje. Where's the argument there? There's no argument to be had there. He stood and traded with him, but the reality is, just like anybody, he got cracked. Gaethje decides to stand on his feet and turkey leg his way back to victory. Oliveira's like, I don't have time for that. I'm going to chill on the ground for my 30 seconds. If you want to come in and try to ground and pound me, do your worst. If not, I'll be up in a second, and then I'll knock your ass out up from there.
There is a certain contingent of MMA fans who, for some strange reason, even though they're MMA fans, hate ground fighting. And they're like, they think it's less than manly to grapple.
Every time I hear this, I'm like, kickboxing is a sport, right? Like, go watch that if that's all you want to see.
Boxing, go be a boxing fan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also like sort of, I feel like McGregor has kind of like added fuel to the fire of that contingent of like Khabib. He's a leg hugger. It's like, dude, come on, man.
And we should point out there's a difference. There's the Ryan Bader kind of grappling,
We'll
and
get to
then
that.
there's the Khabib kind of grappling. You know what I mean? Like there are
Oh, for
different
sure.
levels
For
of entertainment to grappling for sure,
Yes.
but
Yes.
And Charles grappling is hunting for the
Hey,
kill
it's top
every
tier.
single second that he's on you.
Charles has never put on any kind of boring grappling in his entire career
No.
before or after he got rid of whatever quit he had in him way back in the day. His
He doesn't know what it is to
grappling has
hold
always been
somebody.
top tier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He's not grappling per se. He's just hunting for submissions.
Just winning.
Correct.
It's like we lost Damian Maia and got Charles Oliveira. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of where it's at.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where these two lightweights go from here. Let's start with the winner, Charles Oliveira. It's not necessarily where he goes from here per se, but who's going to challenge for the belt next, who he might be calling out, who he's not calling out. Mark, let me start with you. Put on that matchmaker hat. If you had your druthers and if you had that job, who would you want to be matching up Charles do Bronx with next?
So there's been a million names mentioned by him, by media, by fighters themselves campaigning, saying it should be me. First thing I'll say is that it better not be Poirier or Chandler. And I'm sure it won't be, but you're hearing those names, and those fights were way too recent. He just beat both of them. Poirier hasn't even fought again since he lost. Like, no one wants either of those guys. Let them get something else going on before they get another title shot. Additionally, while I understand, obviously, Charles would like it to be Conor because of the payday, I don't want to see that either. We have to keep some integrity of the sport, in my opinion, and Conor should not be fighting for a title right now. At least let the man get one win before we do that. So to me, that leaves two men he hasn't fought yet, and it's Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush. Charles is talking as if he wants them to fight each other to determine it, which I know was also Dana's stance as of a couple months ago. I'm not sure what the status is of Beneil's injury. I'm not sure if it's maybe taking longer than people thought. So it's going to be possibly Islam straight away, or if there's a way to make that fight first, then make that fight first and give Charles the winner. But I think that is the direction they have to go, and I hope it is the direction that we end up taking here because, honestly, it's the only one that makes logical, deserving sense.
Omar, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. Like, just kind of like what Mark said, Oliveira's kind of been planning things out, it seems, on his own. He's talking about wanting to fight in December and having Makhachev and Dariush fight it out before then. And then, have something, I'm assuming, at the end of the year, probably that either end of the year pay-per-view or something along those lines. So I'm kind of okay with that. Right now, the top of the lightweight division, when it comes specifically to Charles Oliveira, Oliveira's been doing work. I mean, he's been wrecking everybody. These fights aren't even close enough where you can be like, yeah, we need to run that one back. It's like, holy shit. I don't even know what we do with this kid at this point. No one seems like they're going to be able to beat him. The Conor fight too, even if it was a good idea, it's a terrible matchup. That might be one of the worst matchups in the lightweight division right now, apart from Islam.
Yep.
For Conor. I hate every bit of that fight.
Yeah.
Every bit.
I mean, the intriguing matchup for Charles, let's be honest, is Islam.
100%.
That's the one we want to see here.
Dariush is not.
Yeah,
Dariush is interesting as well. Stylistically, I think they're both very interesting.
I really wish that they could fight. Like, I don't know Dariush's status, but if he's back in time for them to fight, if Charles really is not going to fight till December and they could fight in like August or September, like I would love to see that.
Oh, yeah.
When did Dariush get injured? Because I know he snapped his leg or something ridiculous.
Right
happened.
a week before that fight. When did Islam fight? Like 2 months ago?
Oh, they're not going to. They're probably going to give it to Islam. I don't think Dariush is going to be ready in time.
So that was February 26th. So it was like a week before that. But at the time, when Dana was saying that he thought Beneil was going to be ready to fight Islam in the summer. So that's the only reason I'm saying that. Because I remember Beneil chose to not do surgery. He had a choice, and he went the rehab route.
Supposedly, it was the same recovery time, regardless of what he picked. So he was like, why the fuck would I have you cut me open? That doesn't make any sense.
But yeah, I haven't heard any updates. So maybe it's not going quite as swimmingly as people hoped. In which case, then just give it to Islam. I know it's weird. I've said this before. It's not he hasn't beaten any of these top guys yet. His last win was Bobby Green. But like, hey, Charles beat everyone else. He's the one that's interesting stylistically. So just freaking pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a very nice consolation to having never gotten Tony Ferguson in his prime against Khabib. So let's talk about Justin Gaethje. There are quite a few names still at the top of lightweight that would be interesting for Gaethje to go up against next. Omar, let's throw it over to you this time first. What do you see next for the highlight?
I mean, it's very difficult to say just because, again, the top of that division is just a little jam-packed right now. While we haven't seen it, a fight with Islam Makhachev would be interesting, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pair them up right now, just considering the circumstances. Because if you pair up Gaethje against Islam, and let's say Gaethje wins, what the fuck are you going to do with Gaethje? You can't give him a title shot again, not that quickly. So it becomes a real issue as to what to do with Gaethje at this point without having him rematch somebody at the top or giving him somebody new from a little bit further down at the bottom of the pack. So, I mean, if Conor's trying to come back, a fight with Gaethje might be fun. I'd be kind of down with a fight with Gaethje. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see what Mark has in store because it does seem to be a little weird right now. So what would be next for Gaethje?
All right, Mark, what you got?
I agree that it's weird. Obviously, Conor and Gaethje would be awesome. I'm just not saying that because I still stand by that. I think Conor needs to make his return fight against someone who's a little bit further down the ladder. I don't mean terribly much further, but like the man shattered his leg. He hasn't won in a while. He's coming off a year-plus layoff. I would rather him not have to fight Justin Gaethje out of the damn gate. But yeah, as for Justin, if Islam is going to get the title shot straight away because Beneil's not ready, then I wouldn't hate seeing Gaethje and Beneil get in there together once Beneil is ready. But if not, I kind of think Justin should be the guy who welcomes one of Gregor Gillespie or Rafael Fiziev or someone like that to the top. Obviously, Fiziev would have to beat RDA first for it to be him. But the reason I say that is there's kind of been this big blockage at lightweight for a while now where it's like these elite proven top guys and they only fight each other. And then these incredible newer guys who like can't break through because they don't necessarily get a shot against that top bunch. Fiziev and RDA is kind of like the first slight crossover. Granted, RDA is a little behind that top bunch. But I think Justin, at this point, having lost 2 title shots, if there's not a bigger fight that ends up making sense and materializing, I think it makes a lot of sense to throw him in there against one of those guys and let someone try to crack through here.
Totally. I mean, Dariush is a kind of a guy who I would say at one point was outside of that elite pack, but just won his way and just forced his hand into that mix. But you're right. Like I would say right around McGregor-Ferguson level right now at lightweight. It's sort of like the border. And then you have the Fizievs, the Gillespies, Mateus Gamrot. Oh, my God. Killers.
Yep.
Yeah, lots of guys. who you want to see.
There's a lot of guys right there.
Oh, yeah, man. Absolutely. Oh, Sarukin's so good. A lot of killers lining up, man. A lot of killers. It's a weird time, too, because it's like the Poiriers, the McGregors are like once they've gotten to the top of lightweight, it's almost like they're looking for an exit. Or they're looking for welterweight fights now. They're looking to do boxing or things like that.
Yeah.
It makes things a little weird.
I don't know if I would say they're looking for an exit, but what they're not looking for is a downgrade. And unfortunately in this sport, like for example, do you know how sick a fight stylistically between Conor and maybe Mateusz Gamrot would be, or even Fiziev would be, right?
Yeah.
But at this point, you'll never see that unless they become somebody of a name, because that's just kind of how
That's
it's
what I
going
mean.
to be.
None of these guys get to fight the top guys because no one is accepting the fight. And now that Justin has lost, I sort of feel like he's the right personality to maybe be like, yeah, fuck it, whoever it is, give it to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Dustin and Conor are going to be like, that's not who I'm trying to fight right now.
Conor will be literally number 13 and still want number 4, number 3.
Right.
And whoever's the champion would still mention his name.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the other thing, because the UFC lightweight division still has Conor McGregor in it. And right now, Conor isn't even in the top 5. And you guys have the champion calling him out because he's the cash cow.
100%.
All right, let's move on. Unless you guys have anything else to say about this unbelievable, phenomenal title defense, non-title defense, by Charles Oliveira.
We will talk about a little bit of this weight controversy later on in the Sphere, so we can save it for them.
Okie doke.